And I would like to share with you the joys we had of experimenting. In the 60s, it was a time of trouble, disaster, destruction, a lot of anger. And as we were aware, Plymouth Avenue was destroyed, and the North Side were the enemies of, really, they suffered a lot. And so we looked for a house, and we found the rabbi's house, who was the last rabbi in North Minneapolis from Knesset, Israel. So we asked him, "Why are you moving?" And he said, "My people don't like to walk from St. Louis Park to Plymouth and Queen." So we then were able to get the house. So we bought the house, and our 5 children and Pat teaching. He had just finished his PhD in American history, so we were going to try it out. And let's see, my first effort was just a happy little trip. We were the only white people, and there were many squatters occupying the empty houses, and a lot of fear from them. But anyway, we went to the park. I took our 5 children to the park, and they had a wonderful time, only white kids, and had more fun. And so our integration efforts were right there. When we got to the door at home, I had lost the key. So being desperate, I crossed the alley to a woman that I had seen lights on there, and I told her I had lost the key, and with 5 children, I was pretty desperate. She invited me into an empty house, but we waited, and she said, "My boys can do a lot of anything. I'll call them." So she calls, "Squeaky, Tinky, come on down here. Got a job." Down they came, happy as could be, and found out what the work was, and it was to get me in a locked house. So we proceeded and got in, and then we celebrated their birthday every year for a long time. We had a birthday dinner for Squeaky and Tinky. I'd like to share the story about Anna. We had friends who worked in the Civil Rights Department, and they called on Friday night and said, "We have no place, and we have a woman in need." Anna from Red Lake has 3 children, and she was shot by her landlord and has no place to go. We said yes, so out they came. Anna and 2 cars of civil rights workers, very grateful, and so it was a wonderful exchange. But as they were ready to leave, she said, "You know, my sister called, Shirley from Redby up near Red Lake, and she just got the Greyhound bus down with her 3 children to help me." And so now we had 6 children and 2 mothers, all in need, and lovely, kind people. So we enjoyed our time together, and eventually she was able to get help. So that was the story of Anna, and the joy that we received has no comparison. That's what reminds me of the music we'll talk about later.
Music, go ahead and read that
the music
quote.
of the gospel, because we witnessed it, and this is why. The music of the gospel ceases to sound in our homes, our public squares, our workplaces, and our financial life. And then we will no longer hear the strains that challenge us to defend the dignity of every man and woman, and the just a wonderful gift that we all are such a part of the mystical body, and we don't need to have rules and laws. We have God's love for all of us. Our mystical body comes alive. And now I'd like to share our wonderful story about the United Farm Workers. Pat had been a delegate from the university where he was teaching for the DFL convention. So he got a room at the YMCA downtown and went to the convention and was very just harmed by what he heard. Violence was the big issue. The war was not bad, And there was Gene McCarthy speaking the truth. And so he was Pat's hero. And Pat just threw in his interest, gave it up, and said, I'm not going to, we're going to look for nonviolence. So in the lobby, there was a nice sheet describing the farm workers. And of course, we knew about Caesar and the nonviolence, so he signed it. We went home, and several days, not that many days later, on a cold winter night, Pat opened the door for a knock, and it was 2 farm worker men. They introduced themselves, and Pat did too, and eventually he said, would you come in? And they said, could we bring our family? In the back, so we said, sure. In the back of their little green over pickup truck, all built in, were 2 women, and so that comprised the adults. They were all 4 farm workers that Caesar said, go and tell the people and they'll help you, because they'd all been given jail sentences for boycotting. So in addition to the 4 adults, workers, there were 4 children. So right there we had 8 people. So we said, sure, come in. And eventually we fixed some supper, realizing they'd really been 24 hours on the road. And so we then said, where are you going? And they said, we're here. This is it. So, well, it was. And it was a very, very wonderful mistake of ours, but theirs right on. They believed Caesar and they prayed, and work and pray does it. So that was our story. Yeah. But then we discovered...
How long did they stay with you?
A couple of months. Mm-hmm. And then, so we had 2 big tables in our living room and dining room, seated all of us, all 16 of us comfortably, and we just enjoyed it. But when I discovered they had no money, I said, we got kind of together what we could do, and we put in a phone and set up some offices. And then I said, Eva and Maria, if you would take the children, Henry and Luis and I might go and find a place, a speech that I heard, and I think we could maybe speak to them. And so we left and we drove to South Minneapolis in the truck, and we had knocked on the door because what I had heard was we need something from the Bible, constitutive justice. I didn't know what it was, but I thought it might be sounded like money. So we went and we asked, we didn't tell her we were looking for money, but we told her the priest, and she said, oh no, it's Monday. And I knew that he was entitled to his time away, but at that, out of the back room of the hall, there came this voice, I'm right here, come in. Well, Henry and Luis were kind of stymied, and I thought, well, come on. And, English speaking's kind of hard, but come in was a nice, warm invitation. So in we went, we sat down, they told him the story. He knew all about the farm workers. I didn't ask him to define justice, but at that, he went into his office, he brought them each $100 for their paper and their gas, and then in his pocket, 100 more. They were had never met to talk to a priest. I can tell you the story of that later, but that's not good news. And so that's the story of the farm workers. We began our boycotts, and they were endorsed by the diocese. Mm-hmm. So prayer is important, and so is scripture.